Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Check. You good, Jerry?
Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Hello. We want to. We're so happy everyone's here. It's so awesome. I'm Dave Hammond, a longtime band director, but now retired. We want to welcome all of you to this wonderful celebration of life, celebration of a life. A tribute, a remembrance of a great person, a great spirit that walked among us. We are so happy that all of you are here. We want to encourage anyone who would like to say some words after we get done with sort of the program portion of this, just to please make your way to the stage and give us a story, give us any kind of story about Ed, because that's why we're here, is to remember and to keep those memories alive. I want to introduce the band that you heard, incredible band. On violin, that was Katie Glassman. And trumpet, it was Gabe. On bass, a graduate of DSA, Charlie Mertens. And on piano, Eric. I want to thank them for being here. Okay. I also want to introduce the family here. So Katie down here, you guys can just clap. Katie Glassman. Jonna Glassman. And MJ Glassman. Also want to introduce Lee Traeger, who's right there, and that's Ed's sister. Quickly, I want to start off with something that I wrote about Ed, and I told Katie I'd written something pretty gobbledygook before about Ed, and then this morning I rewrote it completely because I was really kind of trying to get Ed's spirit, and so this is what I wrote. Ed taught me how to breathe in stressed times. If you worked with Ed, there was always, if there was a hurdle or if there was something to overcome or great news or not great news in the air, and Ed and I worked on DCTA together, so there was a lot of not great news. Ed's first reaction was to stop, open his mouth wide, and breathe. He taught me this. I was an older gentleman when I met Ed, but I'd never gotten this message before of how to deal with stress. And he was so good at dealing with this. So Ed's first reaction was to stop, take a moment, take a big breath, and then tackle the issue at hand. Ed taught me how to eat. On an early trip with talented DSA faculty, I found myself out to lunch with Ed. And he explained his vegetarian diet to me, which was awkward for me at that point. I was like, why don't you eat meat? What's going on here? And he explained to me, vegetarian, why he ate that way. And I was flabbergasted as to that I had never talked to someone so convinced that what you eat is who you are. That was the first thing that I learned from Ed. That was, well, other than the breathing thing, that was amazing to me. It's like, you really truly, I mean, I know that's a saying, but you really truly believe? Yes. And so I became a vegetarian for 25 years after meeting Ed. Because it was so convincing to me that you are what you eat. And although I don't follow that now, I'm so grateful for him for those 25 years. What you will hear today is that Ed was a man of many talents, directions, loves, and emotions. A man who served all those around him, students, teachers, administrators, and anyone he encountered. Like many of you, I met Ed through the Denver School of the Arts. Although we were both new to the school the first year that Ed worked here. I had worked here previously, but that was my first teacher year. I looked up to Ed because he had taught years before me. And I knew he would always be a reliable source of advice dealing with the wide spectrum of people, teachers, and students, and parents, and administrators that we would run into. And that was the new thing for me. I could deal with musicians on a stage. I could deal with possibly students because I have kids. But I could not deal with parents, administrators, and all this other stuff that I had to deal with. And Ed helped me through that because he was such a good reader of personality and trying to figure out what to say. And so he helped me out a lot there. So again, there will be time for y'all to get up and speak a little bit about a little bit about how you knew Ed and maybe some stories. That's what we want to get to, is the stories. Okay, I'm gonna ask Jonna and Katie to come up, because we're gonna read something that they wrote.
Well, as we're getting this together, I'll just say that thank you for being here. I wanted those particular guys to play because my dad and mom heard them play for hours and hours of their lives. And in the end, when our dad got sick, he remembered all the songs that we used to play and all the lyrics, and even when he couldn't talk, he would sing.
Or he would at least, his mouth would move. He knew the words still.
So
it's really special.
thank you all I can tell we have a lot of musicians here because you were listening too.
So we have learned so much about my dad since he's passed. And we realized that there's so many layers of him that he never talked about. He was a human of not many words. He never talked about himself. And so we've heard all these amazing stories, and we chat GPT'd him when he was in memory care. And we read it back to him. It was one of his few lucid days. And we read him this chat GPT write-up of all of his accomplishments. We go, Papa, did you do all of that? And he was like, yeah.
And then he goes, that makes me sound amazing.
It was so cute. So since he is a true storyteller, he loved, telling stories through his puppet shows and folklore. We thought that we would tell the story of his life.
And we hope that you enjoy the beautiful puppet stage. This is the one that you'll hear about in this story. And we wanted to set it up one last time for you all. So, all right. Ed Glassman was born on January 1st, 1953 in Detroit, Michigan, where he grew up with his two older siblings, his brother Alex and his sister Lee. We know you tried to drown him when he was a kid, Lee. His mother, Marge, had served in the Women's Army Corps during World War II, and his father, Harry, was a decorated World War II veteran whose service profoundly shaped the family. Ed grew up in a Jewish home with regular Friday night Shabbat dinners and family traditions.
When Ed graduated from high school, which was an arts school in Detroit, he was seeking to deepen his spirituality and adventure. As any 18-year-old in the 70s would do, he hitchhiked across the U.S. and wrote his mom postcards when he needed a bit of money for the next leg of the trip, which we have found a few of these postcards stuffed in drawers, going through things. During this time, he read the autobiography of a yogi and was deeply inspired by the teachings of Yogananda. This led him to the spiritual meditation path of Ananda Marga, the path of bliss.
In the mid-1970s, he came to Denver to connect with the community of spiritual artists to facilitate art programs. It just so happened that the love of his life was also part of this Ananda Marga project. At the beginning of 1976, they met, and by the end of that year, MJ finally said yes, and they were married.
The same year that they met, they were married. He knew.
This was the beginning of the Ed and MJ era, which involved meditation, yoga, spiritual song circles, puppet shows, songwriting, building things, fixing things, raising kids, becoming educators, and helping absolutely everyone. Their first business together was called The Painting Folks, a house painting company. It was truly the early Glassman family entrepreneur starter pack. And included painting the interior and exterior of homes.
Ed joined the Denver Puppet Guild and the national organization Puppeteers of America. It was through the guild that he got the design of his puppet stage here with us today, which he probably performed at hundreds of thousands of shows on. He threw himself into puppet making. He also told me he learned about puppetry in high school when one of his teachers would have them go to the elementary schools and do puppet shows. And so that was a really special story he told me before he got too sick. So he's been doing it really his whole life. So he threw himself into puppet making, reading, studying, experimenting, and began attending puppet festivals around the country. Even internationally.
Oh, wait, I think that's...
Yes, he admired him. He admired Jim Henson deeply and attended a luncheon with him, a huge moment in his creative life. With MJ writing the scripts, Ed sculpting the puppets, and their friend Doug Smith painting them, Cosmic Circle Puppets was born. Their shows featured American folk tales with carefully curated cassette tape soundtracks, audience participation, and puppet-making workshops. As young children, me and Katie, who first appeared on the scene in the 80s, rode on our parents' backs through puppet performances all through the Rockies, even when they had to feed us food to keep us quiet from talking while they were performing.
I was a screamer. So my mom would feed me grapes.
To serve the community, the next project was born. A food bank in central Denver for economically challenged families and individuals called Mother Hubbard's Cupboard. MJ organized the food donations and met with each recipient. Ed and the kids and volunteers packed and handed out food. Yeah. Ed was mostly in charge of the other project, the food co-op, for a dozen local households, including his. He would order the bulk food, divide it, and distribute it to each family. Yes, these were pre-Costco days. What a forward-thinking way to serve.
To save.
To save. Save and serve.
Both.
So I think this would be a good moment to tell you a deeply personal family story about one of our Thanksgivings. We were going to Taos or Santa Fe on a road trip, and on the way out of town, we thought it was Thanksgiving Day, let's stop and get some food. So we stopped at, I think it was Lechuga's in North Denver, and we go in and we get seated, and they just, they come to our table and they're like, can we bring you anything to drink? What did they say? We have
Water and Pepsi.
Water and Pepsi. And we were like, well, do you have like Sprite or other things? And they're like, no, water and Pepsi. So that was kind of the first moment of this is kind of weird. And then they start bringing us food they brought us food, and we go, oh, do you have anything vegetarian?
We haven't even ordered.
We're vegetarian, and we haven't even ordered, and we're kind of confused as to why we're being, like, served stuff. And so they throw together vegetarian stuff for us, and then we go to pay, and they're like, oh no, this is a service project. We're not accepting money. And we were like, okay, the whole family's still a little slow to take on, but my mom started catching on to what was going on as they began handing us bags of groceries. And then Channel 9 News came up, and my mom's like running out the door. And my dad's gonna get blamed for this whole thing, because we were just super picky, like, do you have anything else to drink? We're vegetarian, and then we're leaving with these bags of groceries. And so my dad's like quickly trying to make a donation, because this is like totally opposite from our family, but anyway. Then we got in the van, and we were like, geez, Papa, can't believe you did that. Ed painted houses part-time while going to Loretto Heights College for library media and communication. When he realized jobs in communication might require him to leave Colorado, he found out there was a teacher shortage and did an additional year to get his teaching degree. That decision changed the rest of his life and influenced most of us here today.
His first school job was a librarian at Brown Elementary. In the early 90s, he moved to Horace Mann Middle School, where he was a school librarian and worked with Barbara Allen on National History Day, which became a large part of his life. In 1997, when DSA moved into Byers Building, Ed started the library / audiovisual program. Teacher, he was that. When the principal, Michael Batista, saw Ed had film experience, he asked him if he would be willing to create a cinema and filming program. So he did. He built it from scratch. He wrote the curriculum, auditioned the first class of students, and founded the Denver School of the Arts Video Cinema Arts program. Woo! Over the years, he received awards including Best Teacher at DSA by Denver Public Schools, Outstanding Creativity Award from the Friends of the Arts, Best Video Teacher by Daffy Film Festival, and the Richard T. Farrell Teacher of the Year Award at the National History Day competition in College Park, Maryland. He never bragged about any of these. He only bragged about his students.
Of course, throughout all these years, he continued supporting the after-school program for History Day, the competition, and helping with the individuals and group projects in all categories: display boards, plays, documentaries, papers, and later websites. He accompanied students to city, state, and national competitions in Washington, D.C. The family doesn't know if he enjoyed holidays together or hearing the new topics that each student and team had chosen more. It's close. In recent years, he was the Regional History Day coordinator for the Denver area. He was so proud of all of you History Day students.
Do we have any History Day students here? Throughout his years teaching, summers were spent touring the region, performing puppet shows with us. And our dad, we were talking about how our dad really taught us about money because he would pay us for each show, and I saved my money and helped pay for my fiddle lessons, and Jana.
I bought my first car with the money I saved.
Yeah. So we hauled many suitcases filled with this stage. I played fiddle in front of the stage, and so many memories. We performed with my dad because our mom had opened Morning Star Preschool, a nonprofit yoga-based preschool in Capitol Hill, where she developed that whole curriculum. And you can see the trends in this family, in a vast Victorian house. Ed did all of the maintenance for this 100-year-old house during the summers. Yes, he painted the interior and exterior of this 3-story house. The other family activity every summer was going to the summer meditation retreat in Springfield, Missouri. Many of the retreats he'd volunteer to organize and run the cooperative games for adults and children. He loved running cooperative games.
And I used to have student retreats for the band department, and we had Ed come up and do, I think that year we were in Winter Park, the YMCA up there, YMCA. And I came to this decision because I was asking him, I said, Ed, do you have any like icebreaker games or games that focus on just community, or games that kind of the kids could do? And, do you have any, like, books that you could give me that are you available these dates? Could you come up and do this? And so he was so gracious and said, I'd love to come up and do it. And watching Ed work with students, I did that a lot in his department, but working with other students that he didn't even know, that he didn't know them from Adam. I mean, immediately there was a relationship with the kids. And one of the biggest lessons I learned as a teacher was the relationship is everything. It doesn't matter how much you know, it doesn't matter what your experience is, it's your relationship with that student that matters. And Ed taught me that when I saw him work with all those kids, and it was just like, no problem, I can do this. So, beautiful.
I also remember at Ananda Kanan, where we went to our summer retreats, he would do this big game day for everybody. And it was all ages and super organized all day. And at the end of the day, we had a water fight. It was supposed to just be like small water balloons. And it got so out of control. It was like all the adults going and like filling up these tubs, and like the kids. It was like a couple hundred people in the middle of the wilderness having this huge water fight. And
Yes.
Man, I'll never forget that. There's so much laughter.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share, before we finish, because we're almost to the end of his story, but how you learned how to breathe from him, he didn't use that technique at home. And when I was a senior in high school, I went to DSA, and DSA is very near and dear to my heart. And I was at All-State Orchestra, and I misbehaved. And Dave Hammond suspended me. And I think I was an angel up till then. But I was really scared that my dad wouldn't use his breathing and that he was going to yell at me, and he probably did, but what sticks out in my memory is that I became so depressed because I just felt like such a loser for getting suspended, and I was really down and like cutting up all my clothes, because that's what you did in the 90s when you were down.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
yeah, and my dad came down and he took me for a walk, which was kind of my mom's thing, so I think he stole that from you. And I was terrified because I thought this would be a non-breathing walk. And he said, okay, yeah, I always get this backwards. Sometimes in life, we have to take one step back to take 2 steps forward. And I practiced my instrument all week instead of destroying more of my clothing. And I had my audition for college like the week after, and got a full ride scholarship. And so it's his support that, I know you all have felt his support, and that's something that I think we can pass on to people around us. So.
During his years at DSA, he joined the Teachers Union and Denver Teachers Club, where he advocated for all teachers in the Denver Public School District. Ed kept pace with ever-changing technology developments over the years and supported students not only in building confidence in technology, but more importantly, in finding their own individual inner creativity and artistry. This was the essence of Ed. Ed retired from the VCA program at DSA and continued teaching only History Day. He taught this until January, when he became ill.
Ed supported both his daughters in their interests as they grew up, going with MJ to every one of Jonna's many sports games and taking Katie to her late-night gigs in smoky bars.
They had to smuggle me in because I was underage.
Always up for a coffee if somebody invited him. Ed just liked the hang. Ed will be missed so much, but his legacy is everywhere. In the puppets he carved, hopefully some of you you guys saw the puppets outdoors there. If you didn't, they'll still be there. In the puppets he carved, the food that he handed out, the students he guided, the films that exist because of him, he lived a life of service, creativity, and love. And for his family and his students, the feeling that he believed in you and that you could fly. May Ed fly high and be at peace. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is see an early film by Ed Glassman. This is called Super Swami Film. Next, we're going to have some people speak about Ed, and I'd like you to give a warm welcome to Lee Traeger. You're going to stand.
Ed was my first angel, and I am here because of my brother. It was such an honor to be with him, especially the puppet shows that I was an honor to be with him. And when I was with him, he always came. The only thing that I was very upset about the last time when I was living in Michigan was that he would not let me take all of my records. I'm still really upset with that. Ed and I would sing together whenever I was with him. And he loved the Beatles and John Denver. And even when he was at hospice, we would sing together. And it was an honor to be with him. I'd like to read 2 poems that I found that explains my brother. And the first one is to those I love. If I should ever leave you, whom I love, to go along the silent way, grieve not, nor speak of me with tears. I'd come, could I but find a way. I've loved, please do not let the thought of me be sad. For I am loving you just as I always had. You were so good to me. There were so many things I wanted still to do, so many things. Remember that I did not fear. It was just loving you that was so hard to face. We cannot see beyond, but this I know. To love you so, 'twas heaven with you. The next one I will probably, hold on a moment. Oh, boy. For my little brother, you showed me a lot of things. I learned a lot I didn't know. But you forgot to teach me one last thing, how to let you go. I know you didn't mean to leave me. Sometimes we have no choice. I miss being your big sister, hearing your name called, your voice. I wish I got to say I love you before you were given to the sky. If God could grant me one last wish, I'd ask to say goodbye. You always meant a lot to me. I could never love you more. I know it's true when they say God would only take the best. And Ed was my angel. He was always there. And to be his sister, to be with MJ, to be with Katie and with Jana, to watch the puppet show and to see the two of them, and Katie and Jana, and the puppet shows, and what he did and how much he loved. And it was just an honor. And he would be so impressed, or I should say, I was so impressed with the National History Day and what he did and what he loved. And I also could never believe the way he ate and his like mushrooms, like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that. And, you know, we would go out together. And he was so proud of Katie when we all went to Katie's graduation. And I could not believe the fiddle and how she did that. And also with Jana, watching her play basketball and everything that she did. And I just, so again, for my little brother, and I was his big sister, and we all loved Dad. And that's all I'm going to say. Oh.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
We're going to continue with a video of a close friend of the family, Jean.
Hello, my name's Jean. I have known Ed since 1976 when I first moved to Denver. A lot of people from our yoga meditation group came to Denver at that time to do work on different projects, and the project I came for and that Ed came for was to work on a arts magazine that featured music and art and literature. Ed, of course, was a puppeteer at the time and played guitar, and I met him at, I think, a meditation meeting at first, one session at first. The one thing you could notice about Ed right away was his carrot red afro. He really stood out in a crowd. We all had a meeting, a session, I should say, of training about 3 weeks that we were learning about the meditation philosophy and yoga practices and so forth. And he and several other people and I, maybe 25 of us in our early 20s, were in this house sharing the space. We'd have classes in the morning, classes in the afternoon, classes in the evening, and in between we'd be cooking, cleaning, socializing. The other thing I should mention about Ed when I first met him is that he obviously was crazy in love with this young woman, MJ. He told a friend of his before the friend even met MJ, "I've met this girl." And it made me think of the Beatles song about, I just saw a face. I can't forget the time or place. She's just the girl for me. That was his attitude towards her right away. During this training session in this big house, the men and women were strictly separated as per yoga strictures, and the women slept on the floor in sleeping bags in one big room, and the men in another big room. And there were a couple empty rooms on that floor too. One morning I woke up and I heard some giggling in the next room. And I thought, what's going on? And I looked around through the doorway, and there were Ed and MJ, and they giggled and said, we eloped, we went to the courthouse and got married. So that was the start of their official, formal relationship. Later in that summer, MJ's mom, who lived in town, gave a nice reception for MJ and Ed and different friends and relations, which was very nice. Another thing about Ed that I remember a lot is that he loved puppeting. He loved making puppets. He wrote the scripts, MJ did a lot of the help, and he made all the puppets himself, which really took a lot of time and energy. He was very creative in a lot of ways. Another thing I should mention is that working on this magazine, we also did some public events, and Ed and MJ especially worked on those. They formulated something they called Celebrations of Unity. They would invite people from different churches, different yoga groups, different social service groups, and just the public in general. They'd advertise with posters to come to these concerts. And the concerts were with different musicians playing very positive music, not necessarily spiritual, but just very socially uplifting and spiritually uplifting. And those were really popular for a while. They often had 50 to 75 people at an event, and they did those maybe 3 or 4 times a year. So it was a lot of work for them. And they really seemed to enjoy it, even though it was really tiring, contacting the musicians and getting all the posters up and so forth. The last thing I should tell you is something pretty personal. My husband and I met in Denver and got married in Denver. And the night of our wedding, we were getting into bed, and we were just about asleep, and we hear this noise outside our bedroom window. And I couldn't decide, we're half asleep, I couldn't decide what was going on. Was it an animal or something rustling around? And then there are these giggles and these cowbells clanking away. And it was Ed and MJ giving us an old-fashioned shivaree, which was a tradition of startling the newlyweds on their wedding night. So that's another fun thing that I remember about him. And of course, our daughters, we each had 2 daughters, and they were also, the olders and the youngers were fairly close in age, and they grew up kind of like cousins. So we really had a lot of interaction with them over the years, and they're 2 of my favorite people, and we will miss Ed a lot. Love to you, Ed. We will miss you. Goodbye.
The next person that I'd like to invite to the stage is someone who worked with Ed for a long time. Please put your hands together for Amy McGrath.
Am I overstepping?
What's that?
I'm sorry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy McGrath. I am the co-director of the Video Cinema Arts Department here at School of the Arts, which I'm so grateful that Ed founded. As I've been preparing to speak to you today, I've been feeling a little nervous and a lot emotional to tell you about Ed and to tell you about what he meant to me and to the amazing community of students that we shared. I explained this to my daughter Molly, who was a History Day student of Ed's for the 7 years that she attended School of the Arts. And I told her I was feeling nervous, and she recommended that I approach my speech Glassman style. And in that spirit, I'd like to introduce you to little Jerry. He doesn't say much, but he makes me smile, 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 and he most definitely makes me think of Ed. In my opinion, all good speeches start with lyrics from a favorite musician. Little Jerry suggested the Grateful Dead nugget of wisdom. Sometimes we live no particular way but our own. And that applies to Ed for sure. But I also thought about Bob Dylan, artist that Ed and I shared a deep love for. As I was combing Dylan for something deep that reminded me of Ed, I just kept circling back to "You gotta serve somebody." Not that deep, but definitely true. The more I think about it, I realize that could have been Ed Glassman's mantra. And in that vein, I was reminded of the famous quote from Gandhi: "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in service to others." That service is how Ed found himself, his peace, and it stood as the foundation for both his spiritual practice and his teaching practice. A little history, you guys have heard some, but Ed founded the Video Cinema Arts Department at Denver School of the Arts in 1997, when DSA became a standalone school in its own building in the old Byers building in Wash Park. Ed had previously been a school librarian, and he told me the story that the principal, Michael Bautista, was interested in developing a program in video and filmmaking primarily so that we would have students available to make videos of the theater, vocal, and music performances. So that's actually still a really important function of our department, but I'm deeply proud of the way the VCA program and the VCA family has continued to evolve and deepen over the years. We're doing so much more than just documenting the work of other artists. We're growing screenwriters, producers, cinematographers, editors, directors, amazing young artists and technicians in their own right. I started at School of the Arts in 1998 as an English teacher and yearbook advisor, and I'll never forget touring the school midday ahead of my interview, and I experienced this profound sense that this was the school I had been looking for, this was the community I had been looking for, and here I am, 28 years later, still living my dream. Ed and I became friends right away, and he knew that I had a strong interest in movies and had focused on film studies when I was a student at Colorado College. In 2000, he was planning the first of what became a 20-year tradition of taking VCA seniors to the Sundance Film Festival, and he invited me to be the female chaperone on that trip. It was a dream come true for any film nerd. Of course, I fell in love with Sundance, getting excited to welcome them here, but even more so with the awesome kids of the VCA department. And so upon our return, I designed a curriculum for the DSA Film Studies class, which is an English class for all DSA students that still lives today in the capable hands of the mighty Joe Carwin. But in 2010, Ed and I pitched then Principal Bill Kohut, hi Bill, on expanding VCA to include 2 directors. Ed oversaw production and post-production, and I developed a program in screenwriting and film theory to round out our young filmmakers' knowledge and experience. Along with the leadership of the Video Cinema Arts Department, Ed was also deeply committed to his true love, National History Day, a competitive program that requires students to deeply research a historical topic of their choice, and then exhibit their knowledge and understanding. He was honored as National History Day Teacher of the Year nationally, and this morning, on my way into the building, I was walking up to my classroom to drop my stuff off, and I walked by a bulletin board that I walk by every day and had not noticed until this morning. This notice for History Day Club on Mondays, and it was a profound reminder of the many, many ways that Ed lives on here at Denver School of the Arts and will continue to. Ed always made me feel safe. He made me feel safe to take risks, to create change, to dream big for our students and the program we were building together. Making people feel safe and supported around him was one of his many superpowers. I once saw him calm a group of 20 insanely antsy History Day kids that were preparing for finals competition. He laid them all down on the floor of a cheap DC hotel breakfast room in the evening and walked them through a guided meditation, and it was disgusting, but it also totally worked. He taught them how to breathe. But truth be told, there was a few times that I didn't feel exceptionally safe around Ed, and those times were always when I was in the passenger seat of his car. More than a few of you in the audience may have your own stories of big adventures with Ed at the wheel. One of my last trips that I took with him, I was a chaperone on his History Day trip, and Ed had a fender bender in the rental car while leaving the airport parking lot. So, like within 40 minutes of our arrival. Since Ed moved to the next room over in August, I've been thinking about him and trying to make some sense out of who he was as a human, as an educator. And frankly, though, I've spent as much time with Ed as any of the men, other than the men in my immediate family, I still find him a bit of an enigma. But here's what I think is definitely knowable about him. He was a true servant of helping young people learn about, deepen, and develop their own interests in a way that I find almost entirely unique amongst educators that I know. Most good teachers are motivated by their interest in young people, hopefully, but also by some content that they're eager to share, something that they love, that they want to share and sort of impart onto kids. I endlessly geek out about movies and what they mean, and that love drives a lot of the energy in my classroom. So that's love for cinema and for learning, and also ego. It's about what's important to me. But Ed was a different kind of teacher, a much more selfless teacher. His main agenda was always supporting kids to go deeply in whatever direction and whatever content they were most interested in. And Ed had tons of amazing technical skills that he was great at sharing, but mostly he just really met kids wherever they were at and tried to support and gently guide them to deepen their understanding and their ability to communicate their understanding of whatever their interest was. And he was truly great at that, like a total servant to supporting the success of each individual student. So that's love of learning and no ego. Ed spent many hours practicing that, reining in the ego in his amazing spiritual life and practice outside of the classroom, but it was also so obvious in his teaching. But even though he always centered his students and their interests, he was always a puppeteer and a bit of a trickster. And performative magic and silliness were always lurking with him and could seriously just mesmerize a whole class of kids who, above all, had an undying love and affection for him. Molly told me that Ed could show up for History Day class sometimes in a seemingly grumpy mood, griping for kids to sit down and pay attention, and then suddenly his ever-present dinosaur hand puppet would be calling attendance. Lil Jerry likes that story. Molly also told me about the year that they traveled to History Day finals in DC with Mr. Glassman, and Molly was one of the only kids on the trip. So he asked Molly which Smithsonian museum she wanted to visit on her day off, and she replied, Smash Records, the legendary punk rock record store that was home to the all-important DC punk rock scene. And that was one of Molly's, still is one of Molly's personal obsessions. And so that's the way that they spent their free day in DC, Molly and Mr. Glassman at the punk rock record store. Ed Glassman has been one of the most transformational figures in my life, in the lives of so many of his students, and certainly in the story of Denver School of the Arts. I am profoundly grateful for him, inspired by his remarkable ability to lose and to find himself in service to others, and I strive to bring more of that into every aspect of my life. And finally, little Jerry and I would like to say, thanks for coming to our Ed Talk. Be well and go forth in a spirit of service.
Next, we'd like to bring to the stage Adam Kulikov.
I too was a little nervous about this last night, and it's interesting because we had a very hard year with Ed's illness, and I feel I kept it together really pretty well. And then last summer, singing a song that with Katie that I wrote during the time where we spent a lot of time with Ed, I just lost it. So if it happens, so be it. Many of you here, and it's amazing to see so many friends and family here, you know how I came to come to Denver and met Ed, but it is worth mentioning, is that Katie and I started dating like around the fall of 2019, and I was living in LA, where we live now, and we were just a long distance thing. I met Ed, probably around a holiday, and didn't know him all that well. And then in March of 2020, Katie lived in Denver, in Sunnyside. Not yet. Well, no, it's just moved to Sunnyside, and I lived in LA. I had a project in Austin, Texas. I thought I would fly through Denver and visit Katie. And the world shut down while I was here, and I stayed for 3 years. So I came for a long weekend and spent 3 years. And I got to know Ed Glassman. Because we became close to our neighbors. Some of them were right here in front of me, and my family, my brother, niece, and his wife, and we spent a lot of time with MJ and Ed. They really were our bubble. And initially, because there wasn't a lot to do during that time, we took walks. And Ed had this idea that we could hang out on their porch. And it was cold, as you might remember, in March and April that first year. And he got one of those fire pit things, gas fire pit. So we could sit out and just hang out, and we would eat s'mores. And it was incredible. I was actually super jealous of Katie during that time, because I never got that kind of time as an adult with my parents. So she got this extra chapter, and I did too. And as the world opened up and eased up a little bit, that routine became the cafes in the neighborhood, Cherry Bean, places like that. It became ice cream and walks to Little Man. Michael and Martha here host porch concerts for us, so we could play for the neighborhood. Katie and I. And the first person there is Ed. He filmed it. He always set up the video thing. And, this became this routine we were in. It was just dinners, it was brunch, it was going to Tennyson, it was going to Universal, all these places in the neighborhood. And the theme of it was that even more than MJ, who was usually a yes, Ed was always a yes. As quiet as he might be, and as much as he had an internal life, he did love the hang. And Katie would look at me and she'd be like, "Oh, should I call my dad?" And I'd be like, yeah, yeah. And he's like, yeah. He was yes. You know, unbelievable. And sometimes he just liked to be out and watch the world, even if he wasn't talking too much. And we really became buddies. And Katie said to me that, like, I was his best friend during that time. Really, you know, up to present day. And for us, I work in film and TV, and I'm a screenwriter also, and we had a lot to talk about. We had a lot of shared interest in storytelling, and my big project that launched my career was a documentary about McCarthyism, and Ed was History Day. So, my goodness, we were very aligned, and we're night owls, and we would just hang out late, and and he just loved to hear about the projects I was working on and get into the production aspects and what cameras were we using and how big a crew and what were the obstacles. And some of the obstacles were really ridiculous things that happened during production, and the more ridiculous, the more he loved it. And Katie said to me at one point that, like, she stayed with me because I was the guy who could make him laugh. Maybe the only one, she would say, but the more absurd the story was, he would just double over with a silent laugh and gasp. And Katie would say to me, I never saw that. But we really had just a flow. And, you know, I'm just looking at all the things. His love language for us was laughter, but it was also helping. And Amy just talked about serving. Ed, if we were moving furniture, building something, he was there to do it. If we needed a ride, we were out to dinner one night in the COVID days, and it started raining like crazy. We'd walk to dinner, call Ed, he came and picked us up. We had to try to hold our breaths or breathe out the window because we thought breathing on him would kill him because of the way that was, but he did it. He helped Katie set up the studio where she filmed all her videos. Stayed up late with us with that. Any computer issue, as you all know. In fact, he gave me a bike. He helped me with the seat. His answer was always yes when it came to helping. MJ also. But Ed was the super swami of helping, and he loved carrying stuff even right up until he struggled to carry things. He wanted to do it. And so, you know, it was like this very beautiful, quiet friendship that we developed, where we might be building the bed together. We might be strolling the neighborhood. We might be just sitting at coffee. We stayed up late one night at our house in Venice Beach watching the movie Uncut Gems, which is an outrageous movie and frantic movie. And he would look at me in the craziest part of the movie, and he'd go, and I'd say, "Are you going to keep watching this?" And he'd go. And the same way, we went to the bindery here in town one day for brunch, and he and I had this little food thing together. We like sweet things, and we were just the people who would fish everyone else's plates, and we got this Dutch pancake. It became a legendary moment because we were supposed to share it. And as it got down to the end, I looked at him and I go, "Should we finish this?" And he goes. And as I mentioned, he came to all of our concerts. He came to the fiddle camps that we had in the mountains, and we all understood his love of music, but we really saw it during his illness. And there wasn't at times a lot we could do for him, especially as it got hard for him to speak. So we sang. And boy, did we went deep in our Dylan and Beatles repertoire. And I'll tell you, like, I never saw anything like it, because when he was struggling to speak, he could sing. And he could remember the words. And one day, Katie and I were in Palm Springs, and we were there you know, kind of get a break from things. It was March. It was a tennis tournament. This incredible tennis player called Indian Wells, and we were there on a beautiful Sunday, and we were going to go to the tournament and watch tennis all day. And she had a thing where we'd call my dad on Sunday morning. So we did, and he could pick up, and it turned into a 2-hour Beatles sing-along, and we didn't go to the tournament. And we both said, you know what? It's totally, we treasured that call. It was totally worth it. And we just walked around, we just sang and walked around, and he sang with us. And he knew all the words. Katie did not. But she's got a great voice. And we sang, I wrote down a few of the ones. We sang Nowhere Man, Norwegian Wood, Ticket to Ride, With a Little Help from My Friends, and Let It Be, which took on a whole other level of resonance. You know, I really understood the song differently afterward and continued to sing that song and others with him right to the end. People should know who don't know that there were 3 moments where he became completely lucid in this extraordinary journey. Jonna referenced that. And he told us about the first one. And then we heard about it, but I was like, really? And then the second time, I was playing basketball in LA, and I'm coming home, and Katie's calling me up and saying, he's lucid again, and he wants you to get over here. So, you know, as it is, it takes a minute to get back. It's kind of, you know, there's traffic there and stuff, and he was getting impatient, and he was like, tell Adam to get over here, get over here. And as I get in the house, I hear him say, Katie says, oh, he's home. He goes, Adam, get up here. And we talked that night for a couple of hours. And he talked even about what he thought was happening to him in a very deep way, about almost like his chi, his energy. And he was a very difficult patient. And Jonna, Katie, and her mom were like, God, they were heroes what they did. Heroes. I'll get emotional again. They fought so hard for him. But he was tough. He didn't follow instructions. He would hide his pills sometimes. He was a tough patient. And we were kind of remembering this last night, but they were trying to like organize some of the other stuff with the finances and this and that, and he kept a tight hand on that stuff. And I'm just listening, and this is when he is completely as lucid as I am right now. And he looks at the Zoom and he goes, Adam, what do you think? Because I hadn't said anything, and I said, I think they are fighting so hard for you, and you need to help them help you. You need to say yes to everything they're asking for. And he goes, cool. It didn't quite work out that way in the end, but you know, we had a good moment. And you should know one more time, in early June, I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico on a project, and Katie called me up and she said, he's lucid again, and call him. I called him up. We talked for 3 hours from that point, and it was about 10 p.m. that night. I think we could have talked all night. I had to get up super early. I mean, I just treasured every second of it. It was a miracle. He told me about his lunch with Jim Henson in the 1980 Folk Festival in Washington, D.C. And he asked me, what's going on with Trump and the universities? I said, oh, yeah, okay, because we talked a lot about academic freedom. And he wanted to know, there had been TVs on in the background when he was, you know, in his different care places, and he was listening. And in his lucidity, he had a lot of questions about it, and he really wanted to know how his students were doing with History Day. And he was, some people here know, he was calling and texting them as if he were completely fine. And anyway, we talked for hours, and I did feel like I was given a gift here. And we just talked. He was loose, he was funny, he was cool, he was just fabulous. And we just hung out. And that was the last time. Because by the morning, he had frozen up again, and that was it. But I will say there were a couple of moments when Katie and I spoke to him late during one of those Zooms, and we said, listen, we're really still trying to help you. And I said, do you want us to keep trying? And he said, quote, you bet I do. And MJ and I were talking in the car ride over about the love for life that we saw in him, the fight. And it was a love for these people in this room. It was a love for this world, love for his spiritual practice, a love for music. It was something to see for a quiet person. And at the very end, when they were trying things at the hospital, one of the doctors said, do you want me to keep trying? And he said, go for it. He was very much in love with his life and his people and his family and his friends. And I saw it in his fight with his illness. And I want to say one other thing. I saw in these lucid moments, we weren't always happy with the care he was getting. And we were kind of talking about that. And he said, these are good people. And the kindness, the grace, the acceptance, it was a model. That was incredible gentleness there. So I just want to say that he did love this life, and he sang songs until the very, very end, and he loved his family, and they fought so hard for him. This was a hard fight. And Ed was able to say, he would say, I love you at the end of these Zooms that we would have. And when he couldn't say that anymore, he would say, love you. And the last word I heard him say was just love. It's the last word I heard him say. And I said to Katie, that's something. So, love you, Ed.
I'm going to read two tributes that I got from people who couldn't be here today. The first one is from Alan Belzeric, who longtime worker for the DPS, but was one of our first administrators here at Denver School of the Arts. I think he was called, well, he'll say it in here. I don't think it was called assistant principal at that time. That's how long ago it was. Anyway, one does not meet many individuals in life who profoundly leave you with memories that never fade. Whether it's 1 year or 20, the images of these people who have brushed your life leave an indelible mark that is timeless and everlasting. For me, Ed Glassman was one of these individuals who achieved perpetual greatness through his many gifts of human kindness, compassion, and wisdom that touched the lives of countless people. I was blessed to meet Ed Glassman in the early seminal years of Denver School of the Arts as a district representative and planner for the new home of Denver School of the Arts at the former Byers Junior High School. Little did I know that I would work with Ed as yet to be assigned administrator at DSA. Ed made an immediate impression as one who could easily converse with anyone about any topic in many ways that compelled you to listen and consider his viewpoint. There was always passion in his words and his deeds that punctuated sincerity and the desire to make the best out of any situation. Ed acquired many friends in all facets of his life as the kind and caring person that he was. Whether it was a cinema, video arts, puppetry, or National History Day, Ed was well known and appreciated for his artistic lens by his many peers. His innate ability to please and to draw you into his world of puppetry or cinema was magical. Although I have not seen Ed in many years, his smiling face, his wonderful ways making everything more calm and serene, his enduring gratefulness for so many will never leave me. Ed was indeed far more than a master teacher. He was an exceptional mentor in life for all of us. Ed, I will miss you, as will many others, but know that the memories and lessons in life will be with us forever. Alan Balzeric. The next tribute comes from a student, and we want to hear from students. And this is the last tribute I have, so if anyone else would like to speak, you need to have, forget about that stage fright thing and just get on up here and say some words. Mr. Glassman, sorry, I should introduce this. This is Piper Moss. She was a student, History Day. Mr. Glassman was my teacher for 5 years. He taught me to navigate projects that often felt completely overwhelming. Everything from research to conclusions to board design. And even when my work was done, it wasn't. Those exhibit boards needed transporting to and from competitions, and when my parents couldn't do it, he drove them himself. Mr. Glassman weathered a great deal from me, from attempts to change my research subject 4 months in to pitches for increasingly ridiculous props. His exclamation and exasperation of, "Ah!" is indelible. And despite his experiencing so many of my ups and downs, I've had few teachers more invested in my work and my growth than Mr. Glassman. Mr. Glassman taught me academic rigor. He believed that my research and my perspective was valuable and worth sharing. He drudged up enthusiasm for everything from the Navy to Lenny Bruce because it was what I wanted to do. He was on my side when judges asked ridiculous questions, shepherded my submissions when I wasn't able to attend competitions. He was a constant presence throughout my coming of age. He watched me grow up from abrasive 13-year-old to spazzy 18-year-old. Without him and Miss Arnett, who's here today, I would never have known that thrill of a subject half uncovered, waiting for me to brush off the dust. Mr. Glassman's passing is grievous to me, not just for the sakes of Mr. Glassman and his family, but for all the students who will never hear that, "Ah!" The students who will never run to him with their newest discoveries, whose yearbooks he will never sign with oddly factual descriptions of their accomplishments. Even after I graduated, I imagined this school had years left of Mr. Glassman in its hallways. I imagined him looking over new shoulders at new theses, tearing their hair out because of new disasters of the type only teenagers can conjure. I hadn't realized how reassuring that was. The idea that of Mr. Glassman as a bastion of academic fervor, until abruptly it was gone. And all that was left was what he left with me, to carry his memory, then is to carry the thrill he sparked in me, the curiosity he taught. What a legacy to leave behind. So anyone else, come on up.
Hi, I'm Josie Gallegos, and even though it's sad to be here today, I'm thankful to Ed that we're even here because I have two daughters, Casey and Maxine, and they were here because of Ed. If it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have been here and been the successful children they are today, or ladies, I guess. And we are just so grateful to be involved with Ed and have him be comforting to my daughters and helpful and getting them through. And then they didn't even stay in cinematography. Well, one of them didn't, but he was still an asset in their life and helping us grow them up. And we are so thankful for Ed. And we loved him to death and went on many field trips too. And we're grateful for Ed and my girls to be associated with him. Thank you, Ed.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Green, and I haven't been in front of a mic in a long time. My name's Rebecca Green. I am a DSA alum, and my brother actually grew up playing cello alongside Katie, and so our family sends a lot of love to you all. And I'm going to try to not cry, because I think it's only when these bits of news come out that you realize sort of the gravity of how much someone has impacted your life. My eldest daughter just started here at DSA this year, which is making me feel very old. But the news of Mr. Glassman's departure struck me because there are so many elements of who I am today. I run a nonprofit, and I'm really hard on my staff when they write things. And I know that that is because of Ed Glassman, because he was very hard on us. And so, Katie, I know exactly, the breathing technique was not a thing that we experienced. We were probably his most difficult group of students. And because he had known me as the little sister of one of his daughter's friends, he really encouraged me to participate in History Day. And I was a vocal major and not really thinking about that at all, and not really seeing myself as an intellectual person at the time, because my brother was very different from me, and I think Ed didn't realize how different until he brought me into the fold with History Day. And I want to tell this story because I think it teaches everything that I know about resilience. Not only did we spend a lot of time in his History Day room, which was also the cinematography room at that time, which was an attic room. I think we don't spend enough time talking about what that school looked like. And I try to tell my children all the time, you have no idea what we went through. But in that room, we would walk down to the Chinese restaurant down the block, get $1 fried rice, and smell up his room with $1 fried rice, which he, of course, rolled his eyes at us about eating and lectured us about what we should actually be eating. And we spent hours after school going home at 9, and we lived in the same neighborhood, and so I spent a lot of time in his car. Again, not sure how I'm standing still. But this story about resiliency that I want to share is I finally made it to national. We made it to state with several documentaries, and then I finally made it to national my senior year. And we worked so hard to get there. And we were so stressed about this competition coming up, and the topic was very, very heavy, and we just felt heavy. And I don't remember, Miss Arnett maybe can tell us, but I don't remember where we went on our off day, but to another state in a rental car, and we got hit by a deer. The deer hit us, totally destroyed the side of the van, and it was terrifying. And Mr. Glassman, who I had made very angry several times leading up to this, I have never seen him more angry than being in this rental car. And within seconds, he takes a deep breath, and he just keeps going. We get back to the hotel. It's torrential downpour. We realize nobody has picked up our bibliography from the printer. And so he drives out in this massive storm in a broken rental car with all of us crying in a hotel room about all of us ruining our competition before we even got there. And he picks up the bibliography, brings it to our room. It was like a scene in a movie where he was like covered in just torrential rain, and he's like in this yellow raincoat, and he just comes in and he's like, here's your bibliography. And we didn't even look at it. We just trusted him. And he trusted the printers, and we get through the whole competition, and the judges say, you would have won first place, but you're missing a page in your bibliography. Dear rental car, rain, bibliography. And we were devastated. And we were seniors. We had already, at this point, graduated. And we were devastated. And he just took a breath and made us laugh. And we all went off to college. And I think all of us involved in that particular group have been through really difficult things in our lives since then, as we all do. And we learned to just take a breath. And I will forever be grateful to him for the many lessons that he taught us.
This is from Casey Gallegos, a student of Mr. Glassman. And you just heard from her mom right over there. Oh, Mr. Glassman, may you rest in peace. One of the kindest, most genuine eyes I've ever looked into, still until today. It was you who taught me what it was like to be given a chance, how to storytell. You taught me justice and cinema, and helped me find the things that I didn't even know that I knew or could be capable of. I appreciated your love for my family and how much you valued our food and culture. Your inspiration and encouragement and passion still lingers in my life. Every now and again, and your smile will be missed. Your genuine dedication to puppetry, video arts, education will live in so many of our legacies, our own legacies at Denver School of the Arts. We pray for your family's peace and comfort as you were dear to them and treasured, and you will be a shining diamond in our hearts. Goodbye, Mr. Glassman.
Hi. Oh, that was fine. My name is Hannah Peach, formerly Clausen, class of '98 DSA. We never got to be in this building. I have been behind this stage. I remember very fondly King Maccabee. I was probably in 4th grade. Every person needs a teacher that sees them. And I have been blessed in my life to have several. Lenny Arnett, you are one of them. Ed Glassman was one of the first. I got to know him in 4th grade, and academics were very hard for me, but he saw me. He saw me as an artistic and expressive person, and he poured into me like he poured into countless people. He was integral in helping me audition for DSA the very first year that it was a school. He coached me through being on the alternate list when I didn't get in, and he celebrated when I did. He was just a pure soul. And I am so grateful that our paths crossed. And it was so neat to see him in the hallways of DSA, because I had been here and then he came. So it was like seeing a very old and dear friend. And the type of guy that he was, Lenny cooked my meal for my wedding. And he was like, well, I want to hang out at Hannah's wedding. So he served appetizers for my cocktail hour because he just wanted to celebrate. He was like just walking around with a tray. And that's just the kind of guy that he was. And I am so grateful I think I had to stand on like a little box so I could reach. That's how little I was. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Swansiger, the State Director of National History Day. I want to tell you some little tidbits about Ed. I met him when I turned 31. It was my 10th year teaching, and I was going to leave the profession. As a fellow ginger, him and I clicked pretty quickly. I was told by other NHG teachers to follow him around everywhere. So I did. And I also had my students follow his students around and watch their projects because I was told there are no better History Day projects in the state of Colorado and in the nation than his students. That is how I started my National History Day career, and it saved me as a teacher. When I took over as regional coordinator and then as state director, Ed seemingly started to follow me everywhere. In 2021, he started attending my professional development trainings, and I would tell him, Ed, you're the one I learned everything from. I'm using your materials. I don't think there's anything that I can teach you. Well, it took me until 2023 to find something he didn't know about National History Day. And indeed, in a 5-day training where he came to every single day, he said, aha, you finally taught me something. I was very pleased that time. I will tell you that some of the stories that I've heard are ones that I can also share. He took all the food left over after every event and gave it to a homeless shelter at every single National History Day event afterwards. And we graciously packed it up for him and just gave it to him to do that. That was something that I heard from a previous participant. I will also tell you that there's always something that we can learn. But here's a great story from 2024. We went to the national contest, and I was permitted to nominate 1 teacher and 2 students to attend a private luncheon with Ken Burns. You know, the really famous documentary dude. Well, I said, Ed, I nominated you, and you have to go. And he's like, okay, I'll go. I said, but you have to do one thing for me. Get me a picture of you with Ken Burns. That was the one mission. What did I get instead? Not him with Ken Burns, but his students pointing at Ken Burns going like this. But Ken Burns was in the picture, and I was like, that's fine, because he put his students before himself and made sure that they were there with him. I don't know if Mark is here, but Mark was one of them in the picture. I'll finally just want to tell you that the one thing I learned from Ed, above all things, is that you can always learn. As an educator, he was probably the best example of what it is to have passion in your profession. And I will always cherish that. And I would like to ask the family if you wouldn't mind if I could endow a scholarship in his name for National History Day at the state level in honor of your dad and your husband. I would really love to do that. Thank you.
Wow. It's been 7 years since I've been on this stage. 8? Wow. What a reason to come back, huh? I want to tell you 2 stories. One is fairly serious. The other is, I hope, funny, make you laugh. About the nature of fate. I was a teacher librarian in Denver Public Schools in 1994. 1995, I wasn't particularly happy with my posting, and I applied for a job at this place called the Denver School of the Arts. They were looking for a librarian with audiovisual experience, and unfortunately, I didn't have that. So they hired Ed. 3 years later, through the auspices of a wonderful educator, Ann Greenfield, who was an assistant principal at the school where I was head of the library and also teaching, I was brought over here to the Denver School of the Arts. And just like Amy that first day, I can't tell you how blown away I was by the atmosphere at the school. The dancing, the drumming, the craziness, the walls painted, the mouse. Remember the mouse in the little corner? I had penguins outside my classroom. It was just an amazing place, truly a wonderful place. And Ed helped to build that wonderful place that I was privileged to work in. So I came to meet Ed, and I have to admit that I was a little upset that I didn't get the job as the librarian. But I think they got the better candidate. And I miss him. Funny. Amy mentioned Ed's capacity to drive a vehicle, and I was encouraged by my son, who was a student of Ed's, to mention a story while they were in California, and the van they were in, and I only know the second hand, so forgive me if I've got it a little bit wrong, but the van they were in was damaged on the top, entering the parking lot of the garage where they were staying. Not quite sure why. But the kids took that as kind of a warning that maybe this was not unsafe, but a risky endeavor to be in a van with Ed. And one of the kids, I honestly can't remember the name of the student, took to, whenever the van was backing up, and you know how they make that beep, 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 beep sound. Well, whenever Ed would back the van up, this kid would chime out with, "We're losing him. We got a code here, beep, 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 somebody start CPR." So if Ed had a failing, and I don't know that it's a failing, it's just unluck, bad luck, it was behind the wheel of the van. And if you have other van stories, bring them up, because it's also nice to laugh a little bit, because he made a lot of people, including myself, very happy. Miss you, Ed.
Okay, hi, I'll make this quick. My name is Mara. I was a student in video cinema and History Day, and obviously, like, Ed Glassman has left such an impact on all his students. I've gone on to be a full-time director in LA, like I'm doing the thing, and you know, when I heard the news of Glassman's passing, it was not missed on me that he really was like a foundational force in fanning the ember of like imagination and creativity in my life, and it's really gone on to expand my horizons in ways that like little sixth grade me in his classroom never could have dreamed of. So grateful for Glassman. My favorite story is that when my sister and I were students here, our family brought in a homeless cat who was pregnant, and we had a litter of kittens, and we had to get rid of these kittens. My dad was like, "There's no way you guys can keep these kittens," and my sister and I were like, "But maybe one of them?" But anyways, we start slinging these kittens at school. So like Miss Kazadi got a kitten, different students' families, like we were getting rid of all these kittens. And there was one kitten left. It was the runt of the litter. Tiny little kitten, very orange. We named him Cheeto. And Cheeto was like the last kitten standing. And my mom was like, "You know who Cheeto reminds me of?" She calls up Glassman. And the next thing I know, Cheeto is off to his new home. And it really just like reminds me of what a big heart he had and his capacity to love and just see the magic in all things. So yeah, great human being, really honored to be here, learning about his life and celebrating his legacy.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah. Ever since I was a baby, Ed and MJ have been there for me as a supportive and loving force. And my mom is the one that you saw doing the video earlier, sharing those early memories in the 70s. And so we've heard a lot about Ed's puppet shows, but there was one moment where he got out from behind the puppet theater. We were at a regional retreat in the mountains in Colorado, and he told this story. And he suddenly transformed. Like, no costumes were needed. His tone of voice, his presence, his movements. He told this story. And even though we were in this well-lit room, it felt like we were in front of a campfire. And he was like channeling this storytelling wisdom of the ages. And he just brought the story to life. And all of his stories had some nice moral or message about learning to care for others and things, and I'm sure that impacted me positively growing up. Ed went out of his way. Ed and MJ so many times have been there for me and my family, and even one time, my sister was getting married in Aspen, and my husband was too sick to go, and I had an injury. I couldn't drive by myself, so Ed and MJ went out of their way. They gave me a ride. They drove an extra hour to take me to where I was staying. Just no questions asked. They were always just so generous, and MJ still is so generous. And Ed was a good listener. He had great ideas and was also just had this non-threatening way of suggesting ideas. I remember my husband was really not sure which direction to take in his career. And we were on a road trip, and I found his driving fun. It was fine. I don't know what you all are talking about. So we were on a road trip to a retreat, and my husband was like saying, oh, I've been in engineering and telecommunications, and it just sucked my soul out of me, but now I'm volunteering, and this, charity work doesn't feel right. And Ed just, he had this just very gentle way of saying, well, maybe there's a way to combine all your skills and interests, maybe renewable energy. And that set my husband on his path, yet he just did it so gently, with such curiosity. And truly, he was just this loving, giving, generous person. And I am so grateful to feel like he always treated me like family. Thank you.
I wasn't planning on speaking, so sorry if I'm nervous. But the van thing, I just these memories came back, and and my memory might be a little, I don't know, you know how memories are, but we were on the trip to Los Angeles, and that year, I think that song Empire State of Mind was playing all the time. It was a hit, and we thought it was really funny to play that in the van, because it's about New York, but we're in LA, and we just kept playing it, and we thought it was the funniest thing ever. And Mr. Glassman, I feel like a typical authority figure would be no more. But he thought it was funny too. And he was just a great and fun person to have as a teacher and know. Thanks.
So I had the awesome pleasure of serving at this school for 5 years and got to know Glassman first as the director for video cinematography. And he had his priorities straight. He may have been late getting in his substitute folder, but he had the priorities of the kids, and he mentored my daughter through National History Day. And she went to state a couple of times, and she made it to nationals. But before I was able to accompany my daughter, there was a time when I was sitting in the front office, and he came over in his exuberance, and he goes, what are you doing during this time, blah, blah, blah? And I was like, I don't know. He says, well, we need a female chaperone on our National History Day trip to Washington. And I'm like, okay, what would I have to do? He goes, we just have to have a female there. He goes, we'll figure that out. Very, very spontaneous. So I have to say it was one of the best experiences ever. This is the first time I got to experience him in this element. And my job was to actually take the kids back and forth during their breaks from presenting to the museums on Smithsonian Row there. Amazing job, by the way. But later on, it was because of this, and Miss Arnett and Glassman coached my daughter for several years through National History Day. And for a parent of someone, of a really introvert child, it's not always easy when she was a vocal student, but it was the confidence from being successful at National History Day that really helped her. And during 2020, when everything went shut down, it was no longer having the after-school mentoring here. He actually came to the house and spent 45 minutes, an hour, going through the, pretty sure he called MJ to say he was gonna be late and he was sorry. And I'm sorry. But he was just such a giving soul. So sorry for your loss, because I still have texts. I could reach out to him and say, hey, I have a question for you in the direction of cameras, or because my son is now pursuing film and my daughter's pursuing audio engineering. And he was just an influential force, and I want to just say thank you for sharing him with all of us.
I didn't think I was going to speak either. My dad, Mark, was just up. I was one of Ed's students. I graduated in 2020. I didn't think I'd be emotional either. And I bring the grief and the appreciation of all my classmates that can't make it today. Everyone I've talked to about Ed's passing has been really broken up by it and saddened by it. And not that I've had a lot of bad teachers, but I don't know if there's any other teacher I've had that I could say that same thing for, that they would be, every single student, saddened by his loss. I didn't always get along with Ed. We fought a lot. I was not the best student, especially in History Day, where I had a very clear vision of what I wanted the project to be, and Ed had a very different vision. I remember several arguments about me and my research and whether or not I was taking the right path, and tears even after school, yelling at each other about it. But I remember when I got my History Day project back and I felt there was a really unfair note, without missing a beat, he forgave everything. And that's crazy. Why would they ever give you that note? That's the most ridiculous note I've ever heard. And he was immediately there to defend me. And everything that we had argued about was just, didn't matter. He was there for me. But a fun story as well, and it's sort of the completion of the van story from earlier. It was actually Miss McGrath that had hit the first car, and we'd wedged it underneath this pillar that was, or this ceiling that was too short. But I think Ed decided that he couldn't be outdone that night, and he proceeded to back up. I think he dinged the van 7 separate times in about 3 days. Once on a pillar, he tried to take a turn too wide or too short, and he backed the van into the pillar. There was also, as we were backing out of this kind of little cul-de-sac, they let the gate fall directly on the van. And I think it was at that point that Ed decided that he'd step away and let this very confused maintenance worker at the hotel take the wheel and pilot it back out. He knew when to step away and when other people could really help out. And so he was a very, very good person, and without him, I would have never had my first film community. And that'll stay with me for the rest of my life. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Deb Rosenbaum, and I was the visual arts director here for 15 years. I don't have any van stories, but I have a lot of scholastic stories. And for those of you who may not know what Scholastic is, it's the only national competition for visual arts, writing, and video in the country. And I think of it a lot at this time of year because December 5th was the deadline to submit for Scholastic, and this was the time of year when I saw Ed the most often. I would see him, our classrooms were fairly close together, and I would see him scurrying across the courtyard, asking me if I could deliver his entries, if I could explain how to submit them online again. And so even though he was competent in many areas, he was not competent with Scholastic. Ed and I both retired the same year, and we got featured on the stage at graduation. And the last time I had a really good conversation with him was at your house. You had a little retirement party for him, and he was so proud of your garden, and he walked me all through the garden. I don't think anyone's mentioned his interest in gardening. And we sat and talked for a long time in the garden about what our lives were going to look like after retirement. And this is the first time I've been in this building since I retired, actually, well, in this theater. And I want to say that I feel this incredible love today, because I'm seeing all these people that were such an integral part of my life for 15 years. And I want to say thank you, Ed, for bringing us all together. And I know that he would be really pleased to see us all again here. So much love to all of you who are here and to the family as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joanna Brown, and I am class of 2000 DSA, and I was a video and cinematography major. And I just have two really silly stories to share. One of them is also a van story. On the trip to LA, you know, we were all in the van and Mr. Glassman was driving, and somehow the conversation moved to, like, you know, drinking, and I said that I'd never gotten drunk. I think I was about 16 at the time, and Mr. Glassman, knowing that I was a fellow, you know, Jewish person, he was like, "What do you mean? Not even at Passover? That's when you're supposed to get drunk." And he was just like, he couldn't believe it. The other story I have is, you know, I was in cinematography class, and Mr. Glassman was asking us to give updates on how our films were going that we were working on, but he was making us do the updates through a puppet. But the only problem was I had just had jaw surgery, and I had my jaw wired shut, but he still made me do it through the puppet. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Glassman.
Okay, we're going to move this along. The final message, if you haven't gotten it already, this is my teacher voice coming out, is one of service. I think everyone up here is talking about how Ed was such a service-oriented person, and how we could all do better in our lives today by serving others. I know I can. Because of his dedication to the path of bliss, Ed has a deep dedication to the act of service. Teaching brought him closer to his studied purpose of meditation and yoga. Many of us who had the pleasure of working with Ed were immediately impressed with his ability to serve students and faculty alike. Ed Glassman's legacy should be then taken on as a message to us all to serve. Serve our community, serve our students, and serve our purposes. We're going to end this today. And again, thank you for coming. With a there's food in the hall, and the band will play afterwards as well. So, this last thing is a video of Ed speaking at his retirement party. Again, thank you, and I'll see you out front or in here.
Absolutely. Back in the day, when I made that Super Swami movie, I had no intention of becoming a teacher. I was a puppeteer and a house painter way back when. And I worked for a company of people who did storytelling. And the head person thought she had covered the whole market of Denver, so she was going to become a teacher. She read in a Newsweek magazine or something like that, that teachers are needed like they are today. And she kind of convinced me, well, it might be a good idea. So I was doing puppet shows and puppet workshops around, and back in the day, there was a woman that had a center that was part of what used to be called Denver General. She was doing a program for preschool kids, and she saw me and she said, you need to become a teacher. And so that was the second hit. So I was going to Loretto Heights. I was getting my broadcast and puppetry major degree. And it was getting to the end, and I was thinking, well, I was wanting to go into TV and do puppets on TV. Well, that was kind of ending. And so for the final year, which was my 5th year at Loretto Heights, I decided to get my teaching degree. And so through their help and through the University Without Walls program they had, I got my teaching degree. And the rest was becoming a 5th grade teacher, becoming a librarian, starting the programs at Denver School of the Arts in History Day and movie making, and the rest is history. So I just wanted to give you some background. And it's been a fun ride, being in teaching for 32 years that I wasn't even going to do. And a blink of an eye later, here we are. And so thank you so much for coming. It really means a lot to me, and you guys are great. Thank you, thank you.
Woo!